Today we'll be giving a gameplay overview and review of the game Haggis.
Haggis. I've had haggis. It's actually pretty tasty.
I actually kind of like haggis too, which I know people will be giving us the ew face, but it's pretty good. You gotta try it sometime. Hi everyone, I'm Tracy, the gaming maven.
And I'm Stephane, the game's teacher.
And well, we're here to talk to you about haggis, but not the food.
Well, maybe the food might slip in there a few times in reference, but yeah, not the food, the game.
Looking for the setup, looking to see how the game ends? Well, click on a timestamp below.
If you like what you see, leave us a comment, let us know how we're doing, and subscribe to the channel to be notified when we post new content.
And with that, let's get to haggis. In this unusual trick-taking game, players are looking to obviously win the tricks, but sometimes sacrificing them with bombs in order to get points later on by being able to take the lead.
In Haggis, we have a deck of cards. There are 5 suits numbered 2 to 10. There are 3 of each of 3 face cards, the kings, the queens, and the jacks. We also have 3 player reference cards and 3 bet tokens with a little bet on one side and the big bet on the second. Give each player one of each of the 3 face cards, the jack, the queen, and the king, 1 bet token, shuffle the remaining cards together, and deal each player 14 for their starting hand. Set the remaining cards aside into the haggis. At the start of the hand, players will bet to see if they plan on being the first to go out or divest themselves of all the cards from their hand. In this case, they can choose to bet no points, 15 points for the little bet, or 30 points for the big bet. However, if they fail to go out first, their opponent will earn their bet points. I'm going to bet 15, and my opponent has bet 30. The player to the left of the dealer will lead first. And then each player must follow with a matching set of a higher value. So 3 4s, 3 5s. Play proceeds until one player has passed. The player who won the trick will lead the next trick. A player can play a bomb on top of any play. A bomb is essentially a wild play that allows them to win the trick and gain control for the lead for the next trick. However, they give up all of the cards from that trick to their opponent, which might be giving them some points. So in this case, I get the cards, but my opponent gets the lead for the next trick. The face cards are wild cards that can also be used in bombs, and in this case I've played a jack and a queen together as a bomb, which means I will get control, however my opponent will win that trick and get those points. A wild card can also be led as a single point card, and the other wild cards, in this case the jack is the lowest of the wild cards, so the queen would be one higher, and that would be my opponent's trick. So in this case, the player who went out first would get the haggis, and they total up all of the point cards within what they acquired, plus any point cards in the Haggis. They also, because they did go out first, would get both their own bet and the opponent's bet. Total all the points, and we play to a total point value of 250 points for the short game.
So now we're ready to give our review of Haggis. So Stephane, what do you think?
I really enjoyed this game. It's an unusual game in that it's a trick-taking game that plays 2 or 3 players, not 4. Unusual, I think, personally, for a trick-taking game, but thematically, I really enjoyed this game.
Yes, I was pleasantly surprised by that too, because I grew up with trick-taking games. My grandfather always, we would play euchre together, like competitive level euchre, and so for me, trick-taking games is one of those ones I'm always drawn to. So I was glad to see one that specifically was designed for the right balance of a 2 or 3 player game.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about art and theme.
The art in this is very thematic to the Celtic, the Scottish historical art, and I like all the designs on the cards. The art on the face cards is looks like old face cards from a regular playing deck from maybe the 17th or 18th century. So,
okay, nice. Yeah, the face cards were kind of a little unusual for me. I didn't realize how old that art might be. So, but the numbered art cards were really good. It had all the beautiful Celtic knotwork. The suits were very highly, even though it was just knotwork and it was somewhat abstract shapes, it was they were fairly distinguishable from one another. So I think this would be good for colorblind people because you can go by the shape of the knot
shape
or
of
the
symbol
suit.
or the color as well. So, and the colors were not the usual primary colors, so I think they would also maybe work for most colorblind people, but if not, they can always fall back on the shapes of the suits.
Yeah, they were a little muted, I think. I'm not colorblind, but I think the yellow and the orangey kind of color were kind of awfully close, but the suits were great, so that was helpful. So, theme. I didn't know haggis was anything but a food, so
yeah, I mean,
a tasty one. But
I guess the haggis comes in is when you deal out the cards to the players, there's a number of cards left over.
Yes.
And that number of cards, you don't know what's in there, and that's called the haggis, because you don't really know what goes into a haggis.
I do,
so
but
maybe,
I won't tell you.
Maybe that's where the theme comes in.
It's good stuff, I swear.
Yeah.
So I kind of, it was unusual because I have a bit of Scottish heritage, so anything Scottish related, so I thought a game that's trick-taking called Haggis, you sold me on everything, so it was great. So components, it's a card game.
Yeah, there's not much to it. The cards there's 3 little tokens and then a deck of cards. The cards are solid, well constructed, and the tokens are just little cardboard tokens, but they're sufficient for what they're needed. So simple component set. Yeah.
Now they have that kind of like that textured finish that playing cards has.
Like a linen finish?
Well, I don't know if it's linen. It's almost like it's like a checkered texture. Like when you feel it's kind of got that like checker texture, which I really quite like. So it feels like a good solid deck of cards that's not going to wear down on you anytime soon. So game mechanics. This is where it gets tricky.
Right. Ha ha ha. Tricky. See what she did there? Yeah, so the game mechanics are fairly straightforward. Each player is dealt a number of cards. I think it's 14 cards. Possibly less in a 3-player game. We did only play it 2 players. We didn't have a 3rd player to test it with. With that, each player gets a hand of 14 cards, and then they're also given one of each of the 3 face cards. Now, some of the cards have point values written on them below the number value of the card in a little star. And so certain cards within your hand will be worth 1 point. The face cards are worth 2, 3, or 5 points, depending whether it's a jack, queen, or king. And the goal is to be the player to earn the most points. Yeah, you play to a set number over a number of different hands. So basically, it's a trick-taking game. The trade-off comes in having to decide whether you want to get points or take the lead, because you want to be the player to get rid of all of your cards first.
And the tricky thing is that bomb, because you're giving up the lead, which you don't usually want to do in a trick-taking game. You're wanting to take the lead. You're wanting to take the cards because that will give you the lead. In this case, you're winning the trick to take the lead, but you're losing the points from the trick.
Yeah, so you're giving your opponent the points. So the bomb is kind of like a wild combination of cards that you can use to automatically claim the trick. However, as you say, you end up giving your opponent points. So you got to find that trade-off, and that's where the interesting strategy comes in this game. And it works well in a two-player game, which is very unusual for a trick-taking game.
Yeah, that's what sold me. And I thought it was like it's 2 or 3 players. I'm going, but usually another thing trick-taking games has is it's often, well, the old classic ones are partners. So you're usually playing with another player against 2 other players. A lot of newer ones are doing that, which we'll kind of talk about in similar games, where it's just each player for themselves trying to win it, so on and so forth. So it was kind of cool.
Overall, I felt the mechanics were fairly simple and straightforward to understand, but it offered a lot of strategic depth based on the options you had available.
Yes, agreed. So similar games.
Other trick-taking games, there's a few of them. One that we've recently gotten that is also a 2-player game is The Fox and the Forest.
Yes, beautiful game.
Closer to this one, though?
Black Spy has similar ideas in the sense that it's a little bit more of a negative point value. In this case, there's not really there's a couple positive point cards, the 7s, but there's a lot of negative point cards that you're trying to give away to your opponent. So you're trying to like bleed off your hand into someone else's trick instead of your own. So this is where you're trying not to take the tricks if you can. Similar ideas.
Thinking
Black Spy.
back to traditional card games from when I was younger and played a lot of these at school, there was a game called President. It also had another less nice name.
Yeah,
I
won't say that one.
I won't name that one on camera. But if you're familiar with the card game President, this gameplay is very similar to that. And more recent games like that would be one is Chimera.
Yes, that's a tricky game, but it has that similar card. Yeah, really tricky game, but similar for sure.
Yeah.
So, final thoughts.
I really enjoyed this game. I'm always happy to play test and try out trick-taking games in particular, especially ones that are 2-player, because often it's just the 2 of us at the table. And it's nice to know that we have options when we want to play a trick-taking game with just 2 players.
Yes. For me, I already know I was going to like it kind of going in. Now, of course, there's always a surprise, but I did actually enjoy this from everything from the name to the actual gameplay to the kind of unique strategy that it kind of introduced to us. So definitely a 2 thumbs up game for me.
Haggis is great. You should try some, whether it's the card game or the food.
Put some whiskey on it. It really is good.
Not the card game, though. On the food. Put the whiskey on the food.